Here's an idea. The future of fandom. Though we haven't always referred to them as such, for as long as there's been stuff to love, there have been fans. They haven't always been treated charitably. In Textual Poacher's Henry Jenkins describes the common attitude that fans were cultural dupes, social misfits, and mindless consumers. But more and more, fanishness is something to be celebrated and advertised, maybe with a t-shirt or some horns. To be a fan is to be excited, interested, devoted, and knowledgeable about a piece of the world. Increasingly, it means to be a member of a community, a fandom. A fandom is a critical gathered mass of fans. Where a kingdom is the state belonging to a king, a fandom is presided over by fans. Fandom is a territory made of and by community. It is fueled by celebration and whatever limited food items they sell at the yearly con, like deep fried hot dogs and just like cardboard quesadillas. Sherlock Holmes and the Railways might have had the first modern-looking fandoms after sports, but their reach and influence would hardly measure up to that of Star Trek, Harry Potter, Supernatural, or, well, Sherlock. There's a ton to be said about fandoms, but today, along with a bunch of other PBS Digital Studios channels, each talking about the future of a particular thing they love, we are going to be talking about the future of fandoms. More specifically, a few possible fandom futures. They're not mutually exclusive, and though none of them are guaranteed, some of them feel inevitable. The first, for instance, shouldn't be too hard a pill to swallow since we're already seeing it play out. In the future, fandoms could control the media they celebrate. This is nothing new. The fandom resurrected Sherlock Holmes in fan fictions when Doyle killed him off in 1893. Their protestations convinced him to raise him officially from the dead. BioWare released DLC to address Mass Effect 3's disappointing ending. Producers of Friends had Monica and Chandler live happily ever after since audiences couldn't be any more excited about their romance. Now that more fan voices are more easily heard, maybe they'll be put to more use. Fans do already wield considerable power, but perhaps as fandoms grow, so too will their influence. Fans could dictate finales, maybe casting and other production decisions too. Heck, they could even concoct entirely new properties. Who says that finished media has to come before an assembled fandom? Both Rome Sweet Rome and Miss Officer and Mr. Truffles existed theoretically before they existed actually. And relatedly, the bigger the fandom, the more fan fiction, fan art, and fan canon for producers to reference. Which brings us, actually, to our second speculation. In the future, fandoms could help challenge and maybe even improve copyright law. In I'm a Lawyer, Not an Ethnographer, Jim, Textual Poachers and Fair Use, Rebecca Tushnet explains Henry Jenkins' sense that, quote, fans usually enjoy an original work, but also see its flaws and gaps, which their work attempts to address and sometimes redress. Fan works like fanfic, fanvids, and remixes celebrate, critique, and extend beloved media, but also exist in uncertain legal territory. They're necessarily built on copyrighted material, the owners of which are occasionally super hostile to any co-option, even loving co-option. Disney, Lucas, Hasbro, the MPAA. Sorry, I had something in my throat. Fan works are protected by fair use, but fair use isn't a law, it's a defense and depends on all kinds of factors, the most well-known and inscrutable of which is how transformative a fan work is. And as Tushnet explains, it can be tough for those outside of the fandom, e.g. judges, to judge how transformative a fan work really is. It can be tough to see what the additional meaning provided by fan works is and how important and transformative that meaning can be for people with intimate knowledge of the source material. Fan work advocacy site The Organization of Transformative Works makes their stance very clear. They write, quote, we envision a future in which all fanish works are recognized as legal and transformative and are accepted as a legitimate creative activity. They seek to protect all fan works from, quote, commercial exploitation and legal challenge. As communications professor Pat Aufderheide has said, fair use is like a muscle. The more it is exercised, the stronger it becomes. And as the case tends to be with muscles, even if you made them by pump and iron at the gym, that doesn't mean you can't also pick up baskets full of puppies or a Buick. meaning any policy made in response to fan fiction or other fan works probably wouldn't apply to just fan works. Its effects would be wide-ranging. And actually, the subject of policy making brings us to our final speculative fandom future. The future of fandoms could very easily become tied up in the future of politics. This could pan out one of a couple ways. First, politicians have always had supporters, but have they always had fans?
I never wanted anybody more.
At the beginning of the 2012 election, some parts of the conservative blogosphere asked if President Obama is our, quote, first celebrity president, which I don't know about that, but his prominence is apparent, along with other politicians like Senator Elizabeth Warren and former Congressman Ron Paul, who have their own groups of fervent supporters whose devotion occasionally resembles that of believers. Has or will fandom find its way into politics in a way that we've yet to see? I think it's arguable, but what about t'other way round? Instead of politics being invaded by fandom, what if fandom becomes more imbued with politics? So much media, and by extension fandom, have consistent ethical and social values. I would wager that any coherent fandom aligns in its members' worldview about as much as any standard political party, and sometimes in ways which might even bridge the gap between traditionally opposed parties. Am I saying that nerdfighteria is the future of politics?
Don't forget to vote, America.
I might be, but also I agree that collectively aligning on the matter of Neville Longbottom being the best is a far cry from drafting responsible and useful policy, but you have to start somewhere, right? For instance, the Pirate Party is an umbrella term for a number of political parties formed, at first at least, around shared ideas about the availability of culture. And they're now in 40 countries, having won elections in Sweden and Germany, amongst others. Of course, each of these possible futures also suggests its opposite. Maybe politics does eventually become more about cult of personality than sensible policy. Maybe in response to the growing number of fanworks, producers just crib from those works while copyright law cinches even tighter. And maybe in response to growing fan pressures, all of our favorite media just deteriorates into fan service nonsense. We've chosen to be optimistic. It's likely the actual future is some strange, convoluted amalgam of all these ideas. And probably some unmentioned ones, like how will fandoms change religion, finance, infrastructure, physics, psychology? Both media and groups of like-minded people working together are incredibly powerful. Certainly there are plenty of opportunities to use that power for good, to shape a bright and awesome future, or to at least get Matthew Lewis elected to something. What do you guys think? What is the future of fandom? Let us know in the comments, and whether or not you support Neville Longbottom for Prime Minister, please subscribe. I always feel like Google is watching me. Let's see what you guys had to say about choosing privacy. Ronan Goldstein and Amy Procrastinating pointed out that we used an asset that has some anti-Semitic undertones, and we are sorry about that. The situation that Amy describes, it was the result of a Google image search, is exactly what happened, but that is not an excuse, and we will try to make sure to never use this gentleman's work ever again. Yeah, that is bad on us. Don't Play with Scissors mentions Moxie Marlinspike's DEF CON talk, which is amazing and one of the germinating seeds for last week's video, and it is stupid that I didn't mention it. So if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's great. It's really great. Zachary Ferraro talks about how when you are using the ClearNet, which is the part of the internet that most of us are familiar with, so not things like the Onion routing network, you should expect a certain degree of not privacy. But Erica Mulder brings up a kind of counterpoint, which is, should we expect people, if they want to use the internet, to be able to use more complicated, or at the very least, unfamiliar services like Tor? I don't know. I don't think so. But what do you guys think? I don't know. Flora Tully talks about how by using certain services, you might be entering into a kind of risky situation, but that you are not choosing to give something up. You are not surrendering something. It is being taken from you. So this is kind of related to the idea of violence from the DDoS video we did a while ago. And then Micah Drake actually has a related idea talking about Helen Frau's The Moral Status of Combatants, saying that even though someone enters into a situation where they're fully aware of the risk, that doesn't necessarily equate with consent, which I think is a really important tack to put in all of this. Very big and important point. Lydia Xavier takes the really great stance that by using the internet, you are not choosing to have your privacy invaded, because using the internet and privacy invasion are things that are not connected. She likens it to having your privacy invaded because you have bought a dog. It's just, that's not how it should work. And I really want to believe this. I really want to think that this is true. So I will. Nicholas Yanes, your comment inspired a great conversation here in the studio. Here's what I think we think, which is it's necessarily complicated to compare the creative output of someone who is making something for public consumption to private information like private emails, right? Saying that those two things are related is a very complicated situation. That being said, piracy and breaking into emails and stuff like that they are both wrong, right? They are both breaking a law. They are both, I agree, the invasion of someone's privacy. But I also want to be super clear that I don't think because one happens, you should expect or excuse the other. So yeah, this was a great comment. Thank you for writing it. Angela Vanderbrook talks about how what we should expect from the internet is not privacy, but rather security, and that almost nothing on the internet is actually private because there is always someone, like a sysadmin, who has access. And I wonder if there is something in here about our expectations about physical reality sort of porting to the internet, that we think that these things are very, very private when really they are just secure, and we just need to not think about the internet in those terms at all. This was a great comment, Angela, thank you. Julia Y talks about how hiding yourself from the internet can be a Herculean task and links to a great Think Progress piece by Jessica Goldstein about Janet Vertese hiding her pregnancy from Google. It's great, you should read it. It's mind-blowing. To the serious nerd one, they go to record heaven. Just kidding, they go to back to my apartment. And speaking of which, there's gonna be no record swap this week because I forgot to bring a record again. I know, I'm the worst. I'll do penance next week by wearing a funny hat or drawing something on my face. I don't know, we'll see. But sorry. This week's episode is brought to you by the hard work of the video editing software Fandom. We have a Facebook, an IRC, and a subreddit, links in the doobly-doo, and the tweet of the week comes from Eduardo J. Ruiz, who points us towards programming sucks, a hilarious explanation of why programming sucks. It's great. Also, don't forget to check out all of the other PBS Digital Studios channels making episodes about the future of. We'll put some links somewhere.